the principle of public trust. Actually, it is a whole gamut, an amalgam of so many problems. There is actually no aspect of our national life today that does not require reorientation over and over again. There is no aspect of our national life today that does not require attitudinal change over and over again, starting from the orientation agency itself, through government and its officials, to the general citizens, to the last man in the village.
It's always difficult, to deal with teachers when you have especially the two of you. President Shehu Shagari used to say, development is a long-term process. What we need to do is dogged commitment and precision in commitment to service to the nation. I remember Babangida used to say, for their tomorrow we give our today, just as you said. And Buhari has always preached that we need to sacrifice, we need to work for the people so that the nation will come upon us in the Committee of Nations. 1 minute, in your projection of Nigeria, with this trend of events, with the change agenda, how do you see the symbiotic relationship between the government and the people towards reaching the promised land?
There is a trust deficit now. From what he said, the people no longer trust the people, the class in authority, because they've seen that they let them down. Revelations in the newspapers every day have shown that. So we need to do trust building. Government has to tell the people the truth.
We have to build the capacity of the Nigerian state. 1. 2. In the age of ideas, such as the one in which we are now, we must actually strike the very delicate balance between generating the correct ideas that will make and allow for progress and for development on the one hand, and at the same time remain consistent and faithful to our traditional core values. The two will support each other.
Yes.
And then thirdly, we must actually come clean to ourselves, begin the process of change with each and every individual.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Well, there's been a moment for thought for this week, and Barakada Sallah, I didn't say that at the beginning, but let me say it now. And again, well, you've heard it all. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's an issue of social contract between the government and the governed. What we need to do as a people and as a country is for the two to work in tandem with reality. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
We have always lived together as brothers and sisters. Though we speak different languages and celebrate different cultures, we were still one Nigeria. There was no bombing, there was no kidnapping, and our children were not cultists. Now, we suspect one another as there are spreads of cultism, bombing, and kidnapping. How long shall this go on? Terrorism is alien, kidnapping is criminal, cultism is barbaric. Nigeria is a blessed country. Support the Nigeria Police and the fight against terrorism, kidnapping and cultism. Always inform the police of any incident around you. Say something when you suspect something.
Remember, we all have a stake in building a crime-free Nigeria of our dream.
This message is from the Nigeria Police Force.
A self-disciplined life makes the job of good ethics more attainable. Self-discipline has always been one of those elusive things that your parents, coaches, and teachers have tried to instill in you for as long as you can remember. Sometimes you heard it, and sometimes you didn't. To help you build self-discipline in the workplace, 10 tips. Tip 1. Just do it. Cautiously decide that you really want to be someone who practices self-discipline in your attitude and ethics. Let your desire to achieve self-discipline motivate you to make good choices. Say to yourself, I'm going to play by the rules. Make a personal commitment to develop and bulletproof your personal ethical code of conduct. You must really want it. As long as you require outside intervention to stay ethical, you won't develop self-discipline. Tip 2. Learn the rules. Clarify what you will and will not do. Educate yourself so that you will not make ignorant mistakes. Rules, policies, regulations, and standard operating procedures can be overwhelming, but you must resolve that you will never make an ethical decision without knowing what the rules are. Become comfortable jumping into an ethically uncertain situation. Tip 3. Be accountable. Accept responsibility for your behavior. Don't blame others for your unfortunate actions and decisions. How many times have you seen a cover-up only worsen an ethical crisis? The extent of your personal damage control should be, I'm sorry, I take full responsibility for my actions, and I will make it right. That is what most people want to hear. Taking responsibility shows honesty of character, which is a rare and valuable commodity in the workplace. Tip 4. Practice. Self-discipline is something you can teach yourself. No matter how carefully you plan to live an honest and disciplined life, you won't get out of the starting gate without actually doing something. Self-discipline is not a spectator sport.
Federal government partners Mexican agribusiness experts in reviving the economy through agriculture.
Talks between federal government and Penguin over strike, and with both parties admitting progress.
Forgery trial of Senate President and 4 others stalled as judiciary commences recess.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on the controversial immunity clause in Nigeria's constitution, whether it is a curse or blessing.
Right, ever since the return of democratic rule in Nigeria, one of the most hotly debated issues has been the existence of an immunity clause in the 1999 Constitution, and whether or not, of course, it should be retained, modified, or totally expunged.
The immunity clause, which is contained in Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution, shields the President, Vice President, governors, and their deputies from all civil and criminal proceedings against their persons for the duration of their time in office.
Right now, Cliff, in the letters of the Constitution in section 308 subsection A, and it says, and I quote, "No criminal proceeding shall be instituted or continued against the person to whom this section applies during his period of office," unquote.
And subsection B submits that a person to whom this section applies shall not be arrested or imprisoned during that period, either in pursuance of the process of any court or otherwise.
And subsection C notes that, again, quote, "No process of any court requiring or compelling the appearance of a person to whom this section is applied shall be applied for or issued," unquote.
And to recap, Section 3081 of the 1999 Constitution offers a visual blanket, a blanket cover to the executives to get away with virtually everything, as it confers on them freedom from criminal and civil prosecution, no matter what offense they committed while in office.
All right, now what that means is that they cannot be compelled to appear in court, be arrested, prosecuted, or imprisoned if they commit any criminal or civil offense whilst they enjoy the privilege of being in office. Now, that's the total sum of it.
Well, Claire, you know, some virulent critics of the immunity clause argue that it negates the concept of rule of law, which establishes that all men are equal before the law and no man should be placed above the law. Rather, every man, whatever his or her position in life in the country, is subject to the ordinary law of the land.
Of course, Cliff, the rationale is that if all men were equal before the law, and of course the law truly is no respecter of persons, then no one should be exempted from being tried in a court of law. I mean, that's the rationale, the logic behind it.
Claire, my mind goes to the United States of America because we're keen into the presidential system of government and the Constitution. And I remember the President, Bill Clinton, you know, going through trials and all that, and he came out clean. And I believe there should be little adjustment here and there. Well, some others have, however, argued that removing the immunity clause from the Constitution will undermine executive capacity, as the reason behind the clause was to enable the president and governors to perform their designated functions effectively without fear that a particular decision or action may give rise to criminal liability.
Well, Cliff did mention former President Bill Clinton. There was also, Cliff, another instance in the U.S., but that's way back when one of the state governors, I think it was Connecticut, was found guilty of fraud. Not even that he collected the money, but of course in form of accepting gratis and all that, and he was tried and removed from office. That's again another example in the U.S. where, of course, we got our Constitution. But they say that the Constitution has not failed to provide an alternative to prosecuting those same public office holders. Now, either by instituting impeachment proceedings against them in the Houses of Parliament, empowered to remove them, or by instituting legal proceedings against them once they are out of office.
Well, the immunity clause has remained a talking point lately, and some people say, does the immunity clause not make people untouchables or sacred cows? It is hindering the growth of democracy, fueling executive corruption in view of recent experience, or as the drafters of the Constitution envisaged, it has enhanced governance. These and some other questions we shall try to provide answers to Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Cliff Ayoze, welcoming you to this very unique edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Claire.
Indeed, very, very unique, Cliff, and I wonder why it's unique, because you'll tell us later on. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak, asking you to once again join us for another business of today's conversation, and it's on Good Morning Nigeria, the program that is reaching you from Africa's largest network, that's the NTA, and of course, we have in the course of our program other segments talking about newspaper review, then it's around business, sports, foreign, and arts and entertainment. Right now, we're kicking off with the news that we are trailing at this hour, and Laurie Bala Hassan is our guide. Laurie, take it up from here.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning and welcome to the news. Nigeria has made a strong representation to the African Union to take urgent steps towards achieving sustainable peace and stability in South Sudan ahead of the forthcoming Heads of States and Government meeting in Kigali, Rwanda. State House correspondent Adam Sambu reports that President Muhammadu Buhari made the request at an audience with the Special Envoy of the African Union on Peace Fund, Dr. Donald Kaberuka. Considering President Muhammadu Buhari's vision for agricultural sector as an integral part of sustainable economic growth, Vice President Yemi Oshibajo has expressed optimism of exciting times ahead. It was at a meeting with a Nigerian and Mexican agribusiness group.
Trying to see how we can, encourage Nigerians, to go into a farming collaboration with those who will bring that technology, to ensure that, we achieve our objectives in agriculture and food, sufficiency, in the shortest possible time.
This is the way that we think, we can come out of the overdependence on oil. Our farm, if replicated in the 6th geopolitical zone, it will take away all our youths from the street and also earn us the desired foreign exchange. So it's a double-edged advantage.
These are the kind of efforts we are looking for, particularly driven by the private sector. It's not only government that can do this. And we are telling the private sector that there is money in agric.
The meeting between the federal government and the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSN, ended yesterday with both parties pleased with the outcome. President of PENGASSN, Francis Johnson, however, says despite its success, he will still brief his members Tuesday before formally declaring the union's position on the ongoing strike.
On most of the items discussed, and they will have to report to their NEC and tell them the brief they received, and their NEC will now take their decision.
Okay. The Minister of Petroleum and NNPC will have to sit down with the Minister of Works to do some level of joint funding to address some of those critical infrastructures leading to refineries and depot. And that was the takeaway from that meeting.
We had a very, very robust engagement. The NEC members that also gave go ahead to do this strike, some of them are on their way to Abuja. After the meetings tomorrow, we're also going to look at it and do what is needful.
And now to the legislature. The Senate is set to reconvene from its 3-week break to mark the Eid al-Fitr festival today, Tuesday. National Assembly correspondent Muhammad Ali spoke with some principal officers of the Senate on issues that senators will focus on after resumption.
I have some few reports that the Senate will look at. One of the reports is the report of the Foreign Affairs Committee on the appointment of ambassadors. And then we have a report on the FCT budget, which is equally going to have attention of the Senate. And then we have some other bills that are supposed to be for second reading. And those will take the 2 weeks of the sitting of the Senate time for consideration.
What we're going to do is to set the agenda and be sure that as we are coming back, of course, when we're on vacation, we can always come back. And when we're on vacation too, committees still work. And any other thing that will help to make Nigerians better than where they are at the moment is what we're going to seriously focus on. And thankfully, the question of our principal officers being on trial has also been adjourned by the courts to September. So that will make us focus more on what we're doing now.
The Senate is expected.
Similarly, the House of Representatives says it is set to resume plenary today after a Salah break. Chairman House Committee on Media and Public Affairs, Abdul Razak Namdas, who gave this indication, says one of the bills scheduled for consideration is the Examination Malpractice Bill.
A bill that will amend the Examination Malpractice Act, and again to also empower state high courts including that of the FCT, to also entertain cases of examination malpractices. We have 3 motions that will be deliberated by God's grace, and these motions are purely factual motions.
And away from the legislature, hearing in the forgery case involving Senate President Bukola Saraki and his deputy Ike Ekweremadu has been adjourned to the 28th of September. This is as a result of the court's vacation, which just commenced.
Case was slated for today for hearing. We could have called our first set of witnesses today, but the court has started its vacation, and it's not permissible for a judge to sit during vacation.
Notwithstanding that, we just have to go through it, and perhaps either or both parties would draw necessary lessons from the outcome of the matter. I mean it, either or both parties would draw necessary lessons.
And still on the judiciary, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Mahmood Mohammed, has tasked newly appointed magistrates in the country to take advantage of the ongoing reforms in the judiciary to discern between chaos and order which arises as a result of disputes. He made the call at the 2016 orientation course for newly appointed magistrates organized by the National Judicial Institute in Abuja.
We must doubtless rise to the task in order to justify the confidence reposed by the people in us as the hierophants of justice.
And the new police management team led by Acting Inspector General of Police Ibrahim Idris has been inaugurated. Minister of Interior Lieutenant General Abdul Rahman Dambazau challenged them to revitalize the police for internal security and check corruption.
Has confidence in you, so don't fail him. If you fail him, you fail all of us, you fail the nation. So I want to suggest that be loyal, put in the best you can.
We cannot guarantee success in our mandate if we fail to build fruitful partnership with civilian population. We must encourage the development and sustenance of community policing models and approaches.
And that's the news for now. It's now back to Claire and Clay for the continuation of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Laure. The immunity clause in Nigeria's constitution, a curse, a blessing. That will be our focus on Good Morning Nigeria in a moment.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Struggling with converting that great idea into a bankable business? Come learn how to create sustainable wealth and jobs at the Youth Entrepreneurship Summit and Expo Nigeria. Theme: Nigeria Beyond Oil. Exploring Entrepreneurial Opportunities. Hosted by the Eco Convention Center, Victoria Island, Lagos on Tuesday, the 12th of July, 2016 at 8 a.m. Expected speakers: Professor Yemi Oshibajo, Barrister Solomon Dalong, Dr. Chris Ngige, Carrie Booker, Bilikisi Adebi Abiola, Bumi Otegbade, etc. To attend the summit, see details on yesnigeria.com.ng. Partners include NTA, Eco Hotels, Beat FM, Protection Plus, and and many others. For sponsorship, please call Indiana on 0703-272-3654 or Bosun on 0817-668-2290 or email indiana@yesnigeria.com.ng. This event and free expo is brought to you by Palm Tree Strategy and Zenera Consult.
Introducing new Dettol multi-surface cleaner for a healthy home. Some cleaners don't kill germs, others kill germs but don't clean properly. New Dettol multi-surface cleaner gives you 10 times better germ kill, 10 times better cleaning, and all-day freshness for a healthy home.
Germs, oil and dirt cause blemishes and uneven skin tone. You need Dettol Even Tone. It removes 99.9% of germs and is formulated to remove excess oil and dirt, helping to reduce blemishes. New Dettol Even Tone.
Thanks for joining us. And yesterday on this program, of course, we looked at how healthy Nigerian banks are. Today, the nation's apex bank, CBN, is reassuring that Nigeria's banking sector is healthy, despite rising concerns over the capital market hurting bank shares. And we also look at the Nigeria liquefied natural gas, NLNG, reducing gas flaring from 65% to 20%. Joy Uzo has all the details on Business News.
The Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas NLNG says it has reduced gas flaring in the country from 65% to 20%. The Managing Director NLNG, Babs Omotawa, who said this in Ilorin, the Kwara State, at the commissioning of NLNG University of Ilorin Engineering Research Center, disclosed that Nigeria is no longer in the league of top 5 gas flaring countries in the world. Omotawa said that the company is investing a sum of $12 million in 6 universities of Nigeria through its University Support Program. The NLNG Managing Director said Nigeria was flaring about 65% of its gas and was the second highest gas flaring nation in the world, which was why the company was established to reverse the trend. He announced that the percentage has been reduced to about 20% after the construction of the 6 trains at the NLNG. This, he said, is in addition to providing a significant source of revenue for the nation, as well as supplying most of the cooking gas used in many Nigerian homes. For the third consecutive day, shares of Diamond Bank have plunged at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Traders attribute the development to concerns over liquidity ratio following the dissolution of Sky Bank's board on the same grounds. Diamond Bank's share fell by 9.5% at about 11 a.m. on Monday, falling at 1.82 naira per share from 1.91 naira at the start of business. The lender had traded 1.71 million naira in shares as some portfolio investors were voting their monies out of the bank's share. The bank has lost 55% of its share value in 2016, with more than 27% in the past 3 trading days. The Central Bank of Nigeria has, however, insisted that all Nigerian banks are healthy. Trading on the floor of the house for Monday, 11th June, finished on a bearish note. Here is a graphic summary. With Business News, I'm Joy Uzo.
Thanks, Joy Uzo there, for keeping us up to date with developments in the business world. It's time now for newspaper review, and what are the newspapers talking today? In a moment.
And the pleasure is always ours to welcome the Obolupun of, well, he knows the community, that's the key of the community.
It's the pleasure of
That's
being
Which of the communities is this now?
Precisely in Yaka local government area of Cross River State.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Please.
Well, it's good, because we have very rich culture, and of course that represents what we're talking about there. Well, let's moving on now, and we're looking first at this day today. This day today, under the masthead, we have IMF, Nigeria's economy likely to contract this year. Country moves up to 169 in World Bank Doing Business ranking. 5 ministers head for investment roadshow in London. Details on page 6 of this day. And we have Buhari considers Hadiza Bala Usman as head of NPA. If appointed, she will be the first female to head the authority. That's on this day today. And on top of the masthead, we have court vacates order to take over Jimo Ibrahim's companies. Amcon businessman to explore amicable settlement. And we also have on this day, Theresa May to step in as Britain's new Iron Lady tomorrow. And of course, I wouldn't conclude this without looking at one other report there. Sex scandal. U.S. envoy to provide video evidence against lawmakers Thursday. Details of that report is on page 9. I think on Blueprint too, we have it as the headline. U.S. envoy to provide video evidence that's rapes sexcapade. It's already been tagged. And we have flood kills mother, 3 children in Zaria. And coming down, Buhari appeals for peace in South Sudan at the bottom of Blueprint this morning. And 13 million teenage girls endangered, NPC. And Edo police foil militants' attack on oil installation. INEC warns hoodlums on Kogi rerun elections, with details of that report on page 17. And of course, another thrilling report there is FG fires DCG, SCG of prisons. Details on page 16. And sure, Claire, you have more reports there.
Yes, it's certainly not the success scandals that you have leading your stories. All right, I'll take the Punch now. And the Punch leads with a political story. Edo government, PDP factions submit separate names to INEC. PDP factions submit separate names to INEC. That's the lead story. It's continuous on page 7. And picture stories there. You'll find 2 different states, protests going on. Akwa Ibom there to the left. Protest in Akwa Ibom, Edo over pension arrears and blackout. It's on page 9. You see the Edo, it's on my right. That's to the left of your screen. Now, 10 killed in Niger, farmers, herdsmen clash. It's trending at the bottom there. Teachers shun Ajimobi's order to end strike. That's on page 10. And 6 Ekiti varsity students die in auto crash. That's on page 9. Moving up above the masthead, you can find there court vacation stalls Saraki, Kwemadu's forgery trial, and gunmen abduct Ambode's account director. AMCON to wind down MRS holdings over 81 billion naira debt, and just tucked in there, just beside the masthead, Afenifere Ezife tackle Oshibajo for opposing Nigeria's restructuring. That's the outlook of the Punch. And just before I bring in the Obolupo, here is Daily Trust. Daily Trust is leading with electricity firms push for 100% tariff hike. That's the lead story. And just a little below the masthead, only JAM can admit students into varsities. And this is coming from the federal government. It's on page 3. Only JAM can admit students into varsities. And the sad story, man loses 3 children, wife to flood. There are other same trending stories at the bottom, and of course the picture story of yesterday's conciliatory meeting between the federal government and Pengasen in Abuja yesterday.
All right.
Omni.
You're kicking off where we have political stories.
Yes, but I think we should kick off with the one we're talking about, the economy, that Nigeria's economy is contracting.
Yes.
I think that that gives a very big assignment from the analysis given in the papers. The policymakers, the planners of the economy towards diversification of the nation's economy needs to really brace up, because that does not mean that is the picture. It's a projection. but if they can be proactive enough in their policies, we can come out of it. Quickly, I think, finally, at least all the allegation about the sexual impropriety leveled against Nigerian lawmakers who travel to the U.S. will be laid to rest by tomorrow.
Some Nigerian lawmakers.
Some Nigerian lawmakers. If the investigation is carried out expeditiously, all this will end. And by tomorrow, we hope and believe that the picture will be, is it true or is it false? Because some people say there will be video evidence, and it is confirmed that the ambassador of the United States will be at the National Assembly tomorrow, House of Reps.
Because I was wondering, when the ambassador wrote that letter, I'm sure they must have very concrete evidence on that very issue. But
well, it's still an allegation anyway.
It's an allegation, all right. But
yes,
if you have video backup of that, it's another scenario, and that's not good for us.
Then David Cameron could not hide it but to say it openly because of the withdrawal of Andre Litson from the prime ministership race, that Theresa May will succeed him when he hands in his resignation to the Queen of England tomorrow. He'll be doing that tomorrow afternoon, and he has described Mrs. Theresa May as strong and competent, and that she was more than able to provide the leadership that UK needs in the coming years. The other story is the conflicting one, Edo PDP. By yesterday, Governor Sirike Dixon has waded into the crisis between the Sheriff faction and McAfee faction, and they are closing in. But the closing in is subject to 4 conditions. Withdrawal of all cases in court by Sheriff and McAfee factions, convening an enlarged meeting of the 2 factions, the PDP Governors Forum and the BOT, harmonization of offices of the Caretaker Committee and Sheriff Sacked National Committee, and keeping the 3 months deadline to hold a national convention to elect, and they have agreed on this. So if they have agreed, do you think that story is important?
Well, they have not agreed, since no agreement has been reached. It's still progressive, because you remember
the analysis of papers say the 2 factional leaders are working in sync already, but only if these conditions are met. So to hear that they have 2 governorship candidates submitted to INEC becomes an issue.
These are written documents. In spite of the move to reconcile them, both factions submitted names of their candidates. So it's only when they reach an agreement that you could call for withdrawal of that.
The interesting one is that, at least we thank God that eventually the planned strike by Pengas and Lupeng is, will we say it's over now, because though the papers say there was logjam, but the reactions by the leaders, the Minister of Labour, Minister of Petroleum, and the leaders of the union, say they had a robust discussion. I think what is just left is for the finishing touches, and
what was the strike enforced in the first place?
Well, there was plans towards that, and almost, yesterday the paper said petroleum stations will close all that, and we said if the voice of reason prevails, at least from the reports.
I think government was quite proactive,
yes,
in calling for a meeting to dialogue and look at the issues. And with the body language of the Labour leaders saying they're going to brief their members and come out with a position today, shows that is very positive.
The other one, before maybe I hear my time is almost up, is that there are fears at the decoration of the new DIGs and inauguration of the new police management team. One of the papers has talked about fears over injustice in the current police recruitment. I think precisely one of the papers talked about that the ongoing 10,000 recruitment of new personnel approved by the president. The breakdown by the Police Service Commission shows that 500 cadet police ASPs, 500 cadet police inspectors, 1,500 specialist officers, 7,500 constables. From the breakdown, under the federal character principle, we are supposed to have 13 inspector cadets from each state, 13 ASP cadets from each state, and 40 specialist officers from each state, and 202 constables from each state. But the fears are that they want to drop the federal character principle from what the papers are saying, and the appeal is that that should not happen. They should follow due process.
Well, the issue of the federal character, principle, whether to be retained or not, has come up severally. And of course, there are quite a number of people who are saying, look, that kills, the whole purpose of merit and all that. But again, because of the geopolitical and, makeup of the nation, others have said, look, it's a very vital tool in ensuring unity. Then we have just a minute to look at the authority. Well, the authority leads with a different story. Economic crunch, insurance industry to undergo fresh recapitalization, and that's coming from the finance minister. And just below that story, you have Chibok girls. Buhari blasts BBOG. That's, of course, bring back our girls over criticisms. And just before we let you go, the story on JAM, it's another interesting thing that I think parents should take note of. Daily Trust has reported that only JAM can admit students into varsities, and the federal government is very emphatic about this. If you go through the story, it says that, look, universities have no business to have any contact with the applicants, only those sent to it by JAM. The only screening to be done is, of course, to ensure that you don't admit those with antisocial traits, and of course fake credentials. Because you fill the forms, you apply to particular universities, you sit for an exam, and there's supposed to be cut-off marks for you based on the criteria set by JAM. We have the merit, we have the educationally disadvantaged, we have the catchment area that we are highlighted by JAM. So once you meet that, I don't see why you shouldn't get into the university.
We talked about that some papers talked about JAM coming up with a new admission policy, and I said
it's not new.
It's a mere return to status quo. That was what you to obtain. You remember when you write JAM, you get admitted either in your first choice
or second choice.
But the problem in universities is that sometimes instead of giving higher percentage to merit, you see maybe giving 5% to merit, and on the other criteria they give the majority.
So I think it's a relief to all.
Well, I think on that note, I would like to say special thanks to Ominio for being here to look at what the papers are talking today in Nigeria.
It's always
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll now have a break, and when we come back, we'll look at the issue in point: immunity clause in Nigeria's constitution.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Does your antiseptic liquid kill the germs that cause flu, diarrhea, typhoid? Dettol does. Dettol provides 10 times more protection versus leading competition. So why take a risk with your loved ones?
Dettol Mom. She only trusts Dettol antiseptic liquid to kill 100 illness-causing germs, and it's recommended for cuts and scrapes. Worry less and love more. Don't just be any mom, be a Dettol mom. Dettol, be 100% sure.
I am counting stars. I am reaching for them. I'm unstoppable. I am you. Together we are every lap, every finish line, every possibility. Together we can change the world.
What happened? It was a mosquito. Oh! Oh! Daddy, here!
What's happening here?
Mama, mosquitoes!
I sprayed, but the mosquitoes aren't dying. No longer, because I've bought Motain Power Guard, which kills 100% mosquitoes. Motain Power Guard kills 100% mosquitoes.
You're on to Good Morning Nigeria. Now to our main talking point today. The concept of immunity originated from the Latin word immunitas, which the ancient Romans used in describing the exemption of an individual from service or duty to the state. Although immunity has many applications, the concept is popular in Nigeria with politics, where few public officials Our officers are immune from prosecution while in office. Makut Simon Macham has this background report on debate over the immunity clause in Nigeria.
Immunity has been part of Nigeria's political history as it is traced to the 1963 Constitution, where provisions were made for immunity for the President, Vice President, Governor and Deputy Governor under Section 161. In the 1979 Constitution, immunity existed under Section 267, while the 1989 Constitution codified it under Section 320. The 1999 Constitution encapsulates these provisions in Section 308, protecting any person holding the office of the President or Vice President, Governor or Deputy Governor. It forbids instituting civil or criminal proceedings against such a person during his period of office. It also forbids his arrest or imprisonment during that period, either in pursuance of the process of any court or otherwise. Also, no court process requiring or compelling the appearance of such a person shall be instituted. One of the reasons behind immunity is that indicting or prosecuting a sitting president or governor will interfere with the executive's capacity and its ability to perform its constitutionally assigned functions, and thus would be inconsistent with the constitutional structure. Another point of immunity is to enable the president and the governors to perform their designated functions effectively without fear that a particular decision or action may give rise to criminal personal liability. It is thought that because of the importance of the duties of the immune officers, diversion of their energies by lawsuits will raise unique risks to the effective functioning of government. Proponents of immunity say it is necessary to give maximum protection to sitting governments because of the competitive nature of Nigerian politics, where losing parties will do everything possible to shoot down the administration of the winning party. Besides, they argue that the fact that a sitting president or governor can be impeached by the legislature makes it unnecessary to remove the immunity clause. However, what many perceive as misconduct of some beneficiaries of immunity has continued to generate concern among Nigerians as to whether immunity is necessary in Nigeria's polity. Those who canvass for its removal believe it will check executive lawlessness, promote responsible and responsive leadership, and enhance good governance, transparency, and accountability. They also argue that immunity is a violation of the independence and powers of the judiciary to adjudicate on any matters, whether criminal or civil. They make the point that immunity is a threat to democracy, as the fact that a sitting governor or a president cannot be prosecuted simply puts such a person above the law and could be a means of breeding criminals in power. With recent suggestions for the inclusion of principal officers of the legislature in the immunity cover, the argument about this constitutional provision is unlikely to die down soon. Good Morning Nigeria has assembled a panel of experts to shed more light on the immunity debate.
Right, Makut Simon Macham, we thank you for providing us with that background there. And it's time for us now to get on with our business of today. That's immunity clause. And we are now being joined in the studio by Jibrin Kutepa. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Nigerian.
All right. We also have another senior advocate of Nigeria here with us in the studio, and he is, of course, a very familiar name, Tawo Eja Tawo, known as Tawo Tawo. Thank you very much for joining our conversation.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Well, Tawo is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and it's indeed our pleasure. From there, we'll move on to Kaduna Network Center, where we have another senior advocate of Nigeria, Yunus Ustaz. It's our pleasure to have you. Now from Enugu, but once we get set with that, we'll link up our Enugu Network Center, where we have another constitutional lawyer who will be there.
All right,
we'll kickstart. Claire?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me. Let's begin, of course. We're looking at the immunity clause, which has been well captured in our Constitution, Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution. And from it, shields or tends to provide a covering for the President, the Vice President, the governors and deputies from all civil and criminal proceedings against, their persons for the duration of their time in office. Let's try to give explanation. What does the total effect of this provision, what is it all about? Let's start with the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, NTA Good.
Well, thank you. There can be no better background I'll give than that which Simon, your reporter, had given prior to this. And the whole essence of Section 308 of the Constitution is to prevent or to avoid the disturbances that public office holders listed therein, that is the President, Vice President, Governor, and Deputy Governor, will face in consistently going to court to present themselves in criminal matter particularly. Because in criminal matter, an accused person or defendant, as they call them now, must be present and in the dock. And so it was thought, and rightly too, that these public office holders, the President, the Vice President, the Governor, and Deputy Governors, must be kept out of that ordeal, so to say, in appearing in court to answer to criminal charges. But having said that, I think that is well-intentioned. But we must also, maybe as we go on in this program, not confuse immunity with impunity. And if we confuse immunity with impunity, then we would have abused Section 308 of the Constitution. And I think that provisions of Section 308, it does not and is not an answer to say that if the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for instance, decide to pocket the entirety of the budget of Nigeria in his private account, then the immunity inure in his favor from investigation.
All right, let's hold you there, S.A. Nukutepa, so that other guests will share their perspectives. Cliff, let's again, Tawu, why was it transplanted into, our statute books?
Well, you know that the immunity, as it were, was inherited from Britain, our colonial masters, and is encapsulated in the phraseology which says the king does no wrong. That is to say, the king cannot do wrong. So that was imported. It transcended to common law, and then we imported it. Now, the immunity clause, as provided in the Constitution, is to protect office holders like the President, the Vice President, the Governor and Deputy Governor from distractions. Because if you look at the situation, even after election, the acrimony that follows, then if the immunity clause is not there, you can imagine what will happen, especially when the central government is different from other, the central government is different from the other governors, governments of the states, who may be different from the different parties and all that.
All right, you've made your point there. That's your opening statement. And from there, we go to Enugu Network Center, where we have from the University of Nigeria, Enugu campus, a constitutional lawyer, Professor Reis Achara. Reis Achara, it's indeed our pleasure to have you join us. All right, let's get your opening comments on this. We are looking at the immunity clause as is contained in Nigeria's constitution. Let's look at how it all started, what informed this. Let's have your take on this. Because we're talking about this. Let's go to Kaduna, and Kaduna is already there. We have Yunus Ustaz, who is also joining us on this very conversation. It is indeed our pleasure. We're talking about the immunity clause as provided for in Nigeria's constitution. As a senior advocate of Nigeria, I'm sure you're at home with this very subject matter, having looked at it from its many-sidedness. What is your take on the immunity clause as it affects Nigeria?
Let us start from the origin. It is not a new thing.
It was in section 161 of the 1963 Republican Constitution. It was in section 267 of the 1979 Constitution, and now section 308 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The aim, like the other speakers have said, is to ensure that whoever holds the office of president, vice president, governor, and deputy governor is not detracted from performing his office by suing him here and there every day. That is the intention. But unfortunately, and like everything in Nigeria, unfortunately, that has been misused to use it as a vehicle to convert public funds. Nigerians are not against immunity, as it were, because during the First Republic, the Sardauna era, nobody agitated for its removal because those people were not thieves. Even Yar'Adua, the president, advocated for its removal. Unfortunately, Buhari too has been advocating for its removal. You will see that it is only those kleptocrats, the thieves, who are praying that nothing should be done with it at all. And as we go ahead, so that I won't talk too much, the issue is that I am of the firm opinion that it is only the thieves, those who want to loot the public treasury dry, which they have already almost looted dry, that insist that the immunity clause should stand 100% as it is today. And that's most unfortunate. Can I still go ahead?
We hold you there, Leonard Silk, and we'll return back to you. But let's again, I just like to ask, is there a difference between the way we've all said, look, this is borrowed from or, taken from either Britain or the US? Is there a way it is applied, or is there a difference between the way it is applied in those countries and the way we apply it here? Tao, sir.
Yes, the democracy in the US has developed, has evolved over time. And the way it is implemented, carried out there, is different. Because the president could be investigated, and the report is submitted to the legislature, who now determine the guilt or otherwise. That provision here in Nigeria, the legislature can handle that. I am of the view that immunity clause should not be removed. It should not be removed, because there will be chaos in this country if the immunity clause is removed. Take, for instance, what is going on in Ekiti. What is happening with Fayose, I'm not going into details. Because he is of a different party, he is being harassed. I am not saying that the immunity clause removes the governor or the deputy from investigation, prevents them from investigation. No, it prevents them from prosecution. That is what immunity is. But that does not stop the powers or the law enforcement agencies from carrying out their investigations. Even while in office, you cannot wait until the president leaves the office or the governor leaves the office before you start the investigation. What the immunity clause prevents is prosecution. Okay. It does not stop investigation. So if the law enforcement agencies are doing their job, they are investigating. It does not mean that the governor cannot be investigated. It can be investigated. Thereafter, when he leaves office, he can be prosecuted.
Okay, I think you've made a very good point there. You raised the issue of immunity and impunity. How do we draw a line between that? Because in the discharge of your duty as executive governor or president, as the case may be, you don't know when you cross the line sometimes, as some do it intentionally. So how do we draw a line between immunity and impunity?
Please, let's not confuse issues.
Yes.
In Nigeria, virtually everything is abused. And a man that knows he has immunity, because he's not nationalistic, he's not patriotic, even when he takes the oath of office to defend and protect Nigerian constitution, flagrantly and in broad daylight abuse Nigerian constitution. And there is nothing anybody can do about it. For instance, there is what is called security votes. that governors enjoy is not subject to any person's investigation, scrutiny, accountability, and so on and so forth. You won't see that in the United States of America. You won't see that in the United Kingdom, because in Nigeria, people stand in the name of the rule of law to abuse the rule of law. And that is the danger we operate in Nigeria. People operate Nigerian law in breach rather than in obedience. And so a demarcation must be made between immunity and impunity. And with the greatest respect to my learned brother Taiwo of SAN, I do not see what goes on in Ekiti State as political persecution. It's not the first time that a sitting governor had been investigated, had his account frozen, and was in court. Admiral Murtala Nyako, for instance, of Adamawa State, a sitting governor of PDP, had his account frozen, and he was in court under PDP government. Nobody cry foul. You see, what is operating and going on now is that there is a tendency for what I call corruption fighting back to stay in power. And you are all living witnesses to how state governments, civil servants, public servants, those who are working, not those who sit in the air-conditioned room and sharing and distributing our commonwealth to the few tiny pockets, are not being paid their salaries, who are in your studio. And with the greatest respect, if resources are well utilized, the largest network in Africa should have a better studio than this. Why? Because people who have the resources, who are supposed to distribute it for the common good of the common men and women in this country, decide in the name of immunity to abuse their office and pocket the money, and nobody is saying anything about it.
All right.
So my submission, with the greatest respect, is that we must commend the security agencies who have chosen now to be alive to their responsibility in going after everybody. And I said, let them go after everybody who have partook in the sharing of our commonwealth that has now made hospital a mere consulting clinic, university as a mere kindergarten centers where our students no longer go to school, and strike is of daily or perpetual origin in this country.
Do you subscribe to its removal from our constitution?
I do not believe in it.
Okay.
It should be removed so that we all be careful, because Nigeria is not a country where people respect law, but people respect what I call the terror of law. Okay. So if the law as it is in its terrorism begin to operate, everybody will be careful.
All right, Leonard said, just by way of information, NTA has...
I know you react.
No. That's a fact. We have a digital studio, and of course, you know that we're also upgrading.
I know you react to it, but that's my feeling.
But that's my information.
That is my view.
Let's bring
and
in...
I hold it very strongly.
Let's bring in now Professor Reyes Achara, who has joined us in Enugu. I hope you can hear us now, Prof. First of all, we'd like to hear your opinion. Of course, we've had this argument to and from whether or not immunity clause should be retained or expunged or excised. But what do you think? And please take this along with you. Why is it that that provision covers only the president and the vice president, the governor, and the deputy governors? Why not other, elected officers, for instance, like members of the legislature? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I should just preface my answer by explaining that I haven't been following the discussions. We had sound problems here. So if I mix up what others have said, please forgive me. But getting to your question, I would like to first explain that I'm not quite sure that we have attached the proper concept to the provision we have in Section 308 of our Constitution. Calling it immunity, it seems to me a misnomer. It is rather postponed vulnerability. Immunity, using the medical context, is when you're impervious to some sort of external attack. In medicine, it will be a disease attack. For the context we're using it is for prosecution, or prosecution, whether in terms of criminal prosecution or civil prosecution of an action against somebody. You're immune if that action cannot take place. But what we have in Section 308 merely postpones it. It doesn't say any of these officers, these 4 officers mentioned, is immune from prosecution in terms of any criminal conduct or any civil liability. It only says that during the term of their office, that they should not be subject to, the processes of criminal prosecution and all that. So we need to clarify that, because there are different jurisdictions in this world where clear immunity exists. And getting on to your second question, that is the issue of why is it attached to just these 4 officers? Shouldn't it be extended to others? My thinking is that, having regards to the philosophy behind it, that left to me, I should think that the immunity should only apply to the president and the governor, being the people invested with the executive power that the philosophy of this provision seeks to protect during the period of their office. That for the vice president, who is just there waiting until the president's, something happens to the president, or the deputy governor who is waiting until something happens to the governor, during the period when they are still waiting, when they have not taken that office, there's no sufficient reason for them to enjoy the sort of protection that is given under that Section 308. So I don't know what others have said earlier. I've seen towards the tail end, many of the people who have spoken seem to have suggested that they will want this provision removed. But in my respectful view, it is a provision that should stay. There are balances. We have to take the bitter with the sweet. In regard to this provision, the duty it serves is more useful than the burdens that are created by it. And it is just for a few officers, just 4 persons. And it's only a matter of postponement. So what it serves to protect against, in my respectful view, is much more beneficial to the state, not merely to the officers who, for the meantime, benefit from it, but for the good of the government. There's the problem of the chilling effect when people realize that they can be open to all sorts of suits in court. They might not be able to do what we have sent them to do. It is true that it is sometimes abused, but there is a method of curbing the abuse, and that is constitutionally provided for by the power of impeachment and removal, which is given to the legislative arm. So these things, we are not actually inventing the wheel. There are protections given in other countries, including the United States, if we may be clear about this. The only thing is that there's a limitation regarding the United States since Clinton and Jones. But before that time, the thing was almost absolute, the issue of immunity during the term of office. So I think that we should retain this thing, and we should reduce the number of people who will benefit. Leave it only to the people who the Constitution invests executive power on. That is to say, at the federal level, the president, and at the state level, the governor.
Professor Achara, thank you so much for your submissions, talking about postponed vulnerability. And we have 17 years of democratic rule in Nigeria. We had a whole lot, that transpired within that time. EFCC was on the neck of most governors, and a whole lot has been happening since that time. I know Kaduna is up there. Looking at the issues raised so far, whether it should be restricted to the executive president and, of course, the governor, or extended to the president of the Senate or the legislature, as the case may be. What is your position here, and what should we do to strengthen it, looking at the experience in the last 17 years?
You see, so far, like the professor has said, it has been limited to only 4 offices: president, vice president, governor, and deputy governor. But the philosophy is that whoever is performing important office, like the president, those 4, should not be embarrassed by constant lawsuits. If that is the philosophy, and which it is, then nothing prevents us from extending it to the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, because those people should not be detracted from performing the functions of their offices too. You see what has happened in the Saraki going to court often and off. It's embarrassing to us, it's embarrassing to you. We don't know what offenses they had committed. That is beyond the point. But I think time has come that it should be extended to whoever performs important offices that actually affect us all. So nothing stops us from amending Section 308. And there is the necessity to amend it now, not to remove it. Just like in South Africa, Chapter 5 of the South African Constitution, is that it should be amended in such a way that, you see, when it comes to serious offenses, like in Nigeria, the most serious offense now is the looting of public treasury by the leaders. So it should be captured in this way, that yes, you are immune from criminal and civil prosecutions, except in cases of financial corruption, treason, money laundering, and capital cases that carry capital offenses like murder. If those four are exempted, the others can stay. It is not good to remove it totally, because the man will be in the office today and tomorrow and the rest. But we must follow the South African example under Chapter 5 and say, look, yes, you have that immunity. But if you do anything in respect of our money, which is the bane of Nigeria today, that Alamesia had to dress like a woman to come back to Nigeria, Darie had to run with 20 million pounds and come to Nigeria and they are free, then we'll be safer. And you see, most people are saying that, like the Fayose case. Fayose case is helpless. He caused it himself. If you know that your hands are not clean, why do you talk much? And the moment to do is now. Is now, because I had said in, what do you call it, this Tuesday something before, that look, the only person who can ensure that this immunity clause is tinkered with is a president who is not corrupt. And I think it is only Buhari so far who has shown us not to be a president that is corrupt. So it can only be done now with Buhari. And secondly, the psyche of the people now is that everybody is fed up with the corruption saga going on in this country, particularly by public office holders. So everybody will now be happy to ensure that the immunity clause is tinkered with. This is the appropriate time. If you allow Buhari go, the next person may be corrupt.
We'll get back to you, but let's come back here again to Abuja. We've all seen that this is a part of the Constitution that says, look, whoever to whom it applies shall not be arrested, shall not be investigated, shall not be
not investigated.
Not investigated.
It's not there.
Okay, no, it's not there.
No.
So the person can be investigated.
Of course.
And put aside. All right.
The Supreme Court has said so. In let me so rest in peace. Chief Ganifa Emi had gone to court, and the Supreme Court pronouncement is clear on the point that the fact that you enjoy immunity does not mean you enjoy immunity from investigation.
So
that was a petition against Asiwaju Bola Tinubu when as a sitting governor.
Okay. So my question is, what is the wisdom in investigating a person of corrupt, practices, and then you keep the result of your investigation aside, and the person enjoys the tenure of his office?
Very simple. You cannot prosecute without evidence, and so when evidence is fresh and is available to be kept, you can keep the evidence, because time does not run against prosecution. But time can run against availability of evidence. Yeah. For instance, if let's go back to the popular issue now. If it's found in my account as a governor of Abuja State, the sum of $3 billion, which is not my legitimate income, and I enjoy immunity, and we need this money to be tendered, or evidence of it to be tendered after my tenure of office, the state must ensure that that money does not leave the account. And there is a popular misconception going on here that we need to clarify. A lot of people say if you enjoy immunity, you cannot be investigated because if your account is frozen, your fundamental right to fair hearing is tampered with. No. The EFCC or the security operatives goes after the bank where this money is warehoused. So it is EFCC versus Bank ABC PLC. And the order is against the bank. Don't allow the money to be withdrawn. Now, if you are angry with the manner in which EFCC obtained the order as the beneficiaries of the money, you go to court, then you have dropped the garment of immunity because you are now in the court and the state is entitled to provide defense.
How do you operate when your account is frozen?
Which account? The account has been frozen. You are angry with the bank that frozen your account. Sue the bank, join the state. The bank will have a defense. It's the state that obtain an order, say I should not operate the account. Because one of the ways a bank will not do customers with his client is when there is a legitimate order of court against the account. And so once you sue the bank, you go to court. As a state, my defense will be, the law is sufficiently settled upon which there can be no departure. That no court of law is to lend its aid to criminal activities. And so if the state has evidence that the money in that account by you as a sitting governor is a product of criminality, the court jurisdiction can even be challenged to entertain your complaint as a governor. That gives the state opportunity to keep the money until you leave the office.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cliff.
This is a jurisprudential issue that Nigerians need to be told and need to know, because we must encourage proactive way. And let me tell you, very many people that have enjoyed immunity have also been in court. And the Supreme Court has said, look, for instance, if a sitting governor is in office and there is a pre-election matter, you cannot say because of Section 308 that the case cannot continue.
How many of those, office holders who have been investigated or were investigated while in office have been prosecuted after leaving office?
Exactly. That is the issue that you and all of us should now agitate.
Yes. Let's have Mr. coming here.
Yes, that's why I said they can go ahead and investigate, and after the office they prosecute. Now they have investigated so many matters. How many have they prosecuted?
Exactly.
That is the fault of the law enforcement agencies and the prosecuting authorities. They have not really done what they are supposed to do.
So that is because there is no political will. Because in Nigeria, for instance, I'm sorry to interrupt my learner brother. Because in Nigeria, for instance,
I think he has. Let him land.
Yes.
Okay. Let's work.
Yes, because if they investigate properly, they can even present this thing to the legislature. They can, because that is a misconduct.
So why are they not doing it?
That is the fault of the prosecuting authorities and law enforcement agencies. So the issue of removal of immunity or prohibition from prosecution does not arise.
Okay. Claire, before we go to Professor Sarah, I know you are going to know.
Yes.
We must know in this country that there is a very thin demarcation between the executive and legislature.
Yes.
The only independent arm of government which is now almost being invaded by political corruption is also the judiciary. Yeah. Because the executive arm of government and legislature, they are just in pari delito. They are guilty at the same time. You cannot investigate, take to the legislature now to say impeach a governor. They are in the pocket of the governor because of the looting of our commonwealth. And they meet them in the night. What is happening?
That's the lack of political will we are talking about.
Little gentlemen, I think the lawyers are also at the very background of this very issue, because you are the ones that we encourage to take the matter to court or not to take it to the court. But let's go to Professor Achara there. You've had the arguments about prosecution, and of course, senior advocates of Nigeria are arguing on both sides, whether to investigate or not to investigate, or prosecution, So they all agree on that. But the measure of investigation, and we know too well that it is the lawyers that are involved. They will either encourage the person being accused or whose rights have been maligned, to go to court or not. What is your position on that?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but, perhaps taking the last first, that is the traditional attack on us lawyers, that we encourage this. We don't stay there when people steal the money. It's when people get into trouble, and sometimes the people are wrongly accused, And what we merely do is to give them a voice in the courts. It's for the court to come to a determination one way or the other, whether those people are actually guilty as charged or not. So I'm not quite sure that it is an appropriate thing to lay the responsibility at the doorsteps of lawyers or litigation lawyers particularly. Then regarding the issue of prosecution and non-prosecution of people who have served out their term, I'm not quite sure again, that historically we can say that the state has been, failing in its duty. I recall that after the term of office of Rebadu, that a lot of people, former governors and all that, were charged to court. It is a different thing that when President Yar'Adua took over and some people gained ascendancy in his regime and a lot of influence, that this very hardworking officer of the EFCC was edged out of his position. And many of these things tapered down. That is the frenetic pace that was used to pursue these people, tapered down. But remember that it has not ended. A lot of people, including the previous governor of this state, are still in court. And what they've been doing is postponing the thing, adjourning. But luckily enough, we now have another Rebadu, Magu, the current EFCC chairman. And he's shown, a zeal to do his job. And he is supported by the political authority, which is the president of the country, to go ahead and do his job. So we are seeing these things coming back up. What I'm trying to explain here is that there are, inherent in the Constitution, various mechanisms for ensuring that this postponed vulnerability does not turn out to be a total immunity. And it has been taking effect. The only persons we should worry about are the political authorities and the officers in EFCC and such organs that should prosecute these matters. If they have the necessary political will and zeal to do their job, these things can be done. And then getting back to the issue of the legislators, I'm not quite sure. My learned friend, J.S. Okutepa, meanwhile, greetings, J.S. Okutepa, we haven't seen for some time, So, but I'm not quite sure that it will be right to generalize and say that all legislators are in the pockets of the executive, because that doesn't seem to be congruent with our history, even our recent history. Nobody can say that the Senate run by David Mark was under anybody's pocket. You may quarrel with his politics, but you can't doubt that the sixth and seventh Senates, National Assemblies, stood independently of the executive. You can't say, for example, that the current governor of Sokoto State, who was the speaker, was in cahoots with the executive when he was the speaker. They maintain their independence, and you must give it to them, at least the national legislature. You may say that at the state level that there have been some places where they have not had that kind of independence. But, the history is that we've had a reasonable measure of independence from our legislature. It's just a different thing is whether they have the will to investigate, not necessarily because they're in anybody's pocket. So we should now concentrate as a people to see that these powers we have given to these people are exercised to our benefit. And there are two ways of doing this. One way is to ensure that the people who we put into office by election are people who have independent means even before they got into office. People who have professions, people who earned a living, who did not depend on any godfather or anything to earn a living. So these people are naturally independent-minded. And secondly, another way of getting about this is to ensure that the people who are already in power, we can ask them, we can assist them in developing means, even outside the normal impeachment procedures, to develop means such as independent prosecutor, the kind of thing we had by Ken Starr against Clinton, President Clinton. You see, there are some things which you cannot do in a body. or you'll be inefficient in doing in a body. But if you bring a specialist who is independent from the normal Ministry of Justice, so you can't say executive, is influencing this person, the legislature will appoint an independent prosecutor, give him the necessary resources to make proper investigations, and you will find that much of these problems will be solved. That is my thinking.
Also return back to you. We have gotten, of course, quite a number of tweets that we will read immediately. But just before that, we'd like to take Senior Leonard Sekostas in Kaduna. Leonard Sekostas, those who argue against argue for the removal of this clause, term it as, like you all know, carte blanche. There's absolute freedom for murder. These people get away with all sorts of things, and rather than do the work for which they are assigned, they plan their getaway. So, I mean, how do you respond to that?
I said it before. And unless we follow the South African example, we will not get out of this problem. It's simply this. Now, immunity clause, yes, but it does not cover, it should not cover murder, looting of public treasury, treason, money laundering. These are the 4 key areas where everybody want to be a governor so that he can be free from all these things. Once these juicy aspects are removed, leave them with the other ones. Yes, they can have immunity. But if we don't do that, we are just speaking grammar. Make sure that this is done. And then make sure too, because if our aim is really to make all those who are concerned with public service, the essential ones like the governor, president, and the legislators, speaker and senate, are free from this constant embarrassment, then it should also cover the senate president and the speaker of the House of Representatives. And then the issue simply, as I see it, is this. Now, when my learned brothers have talked about investigation different from prosecution. Yes, I agree, but the line is too thin. Now, when you are trying to investigate, yes, you have that right, but necessarily you run into breaching Section 308 of the Constitution. For example, what is happening in Fayose's case? Now, Justice Kolawole of the Federal High Court has ruled that, look, you cannot even investigate these things without an order of a court, not a magistrate court, but a high court. And Section 308 says that you cannot even issue any proceedings, anything that concerns court against a sitting governor. When you are going to apply for this order, are you not going to say Fayose, who is a sitting governor? So the only way out is to ensure that we curtail these things, remove these 4. And if you want to remove these 4, I'm sure the legislators and naturally Buhari, who is an honest person, will not say don't remove it. Buhari will sign it immediately. That is the only way out. Without that, we'll continue to talk. Forget about the fact that Fayose has been misbehaving, and we have seen that he has looted a lot of money. In fact, the only governor I've seen who have gone outside the country to preach against his own country. We went to China and said, don't give money to our own country. I've never seen that. But that is as it may be. But then the immunity clause still says that, look, you cannot take him to court. You can't do anything that affects his name in a court of law. So how did EFCC get that order? Did they not mention the name Fayose? We should be careful about trying to punish an enemy today. Tomorrow it may be your brother.
Very much, All Stars, for your input there, talking about using the South African example and all that. But we'll see how it goes. There is a thin line between investigation and even prosecution, because you say you have to mention the name and you need an order of the High Court before you can start such investigation. Well, we'll be continuing with this discussion on immunity clause in Nigeria's constitution. When we come back, we'll get the input of Nigerians.
Hi, I'm Corey David. Okay, guess what? The police force is more efficient and more proactive than ever. All we need to do is trust the police and partner with the police. I don't get that lot. God, you win. The police is here to protect and serve you. All they need is your cooperation. They be one for my hand, but God, you win. So I'm calling on all communities to cooperate with the police to ensure fast response in case of any emergency. Police na your friend, though. If you no call police, who you want call? I don't change my name to God you win.
This message is from the Nigeria Police Force.
Hey, I just had a shower, but why do I still feel so hot and sweaty? Let me finish this and I will show you something surprising. Let's take a look. See, heat means sweat. Sweat brings germs. Dettol 100 times cool. It removes germs to leave you feeling clean, fresh, and 100 times cool. Beat the heat and germs with Dettol 100 times cool.
Dettol, endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Admission forms for the 2016-2017 academic session of the NTA Television College Jos into diploma courses are now on sale. NTA Television College Jos is the only federal government-owned specialized tertiary institution charged with the mandate of providing high-quality professional education in television production, engineering and journalism. It runs diploma courses in television production, television journalism and television engineering. Applicants are required to have at least 5 credits in English language and mathematics at SSCE, NECO or GCE-O levels. Application forms can be obtained from the college at Rayfield Jos on payment of a non-refundable fee of 7,500 naira in bank draft, or at NTA state capital stations nationwide. Completed application forms should be returned to the office of the academic secretary, NTA Television College Rayfield Jos, or the center of purchase. For further inquiries, please call 080-6558-7730. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
All right, thank you for joining us. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and our business for today, it's looking at the wisdom in the immunity clause in our constitution. We have, of course, Nigerians joined in our conversation, and they have sent in their tweets. Avese Uhuru, it's tweeting, because of the level of our democracy and our complexities in nature, let it be retained for the president and governors, and he puts here their deputies.
And Uzobu Prosper said, yes, I agree. Let it be removed because immunity in Nigeria now encourages impunity, or better still, let it be redefined.
Right, Mike Ayako tweets, it should be retained for president and vice, as well as governors and deputies.
And Uzeshi JP says, immunity clause should be totally removed. It will help the office holders to sit well and avoid any corruption tendencies.
And Ibenemed Dominic tweets, immunity breeds leaders' recklessness and bloody thirst for power. We can allow it for civil cases, but never in criminal cases.
Anede Eshet, the problem we have in Nigeria concerning immunity are the operators hiding behind to commit crime.
Saidu tweets, the immunity clause only protects the person from being taken to court while in office. After term of office, it ceases.
And Sani Omokaja, immunity has become impunity. If immunity must stay, other arms should enjoy it, else it should be removed. Immunity is currently being used by some executive officers to prolong the probe of corruption charges. Remove it now. We were told then that CONFAB 2015 addressed immunity issue squarely Why is the report of Confab not yet adopted? I think we'll begin by getting their reaction to the issues raised there. Let's start with you, Kel. What is of interest to you looking at all the issues raised by Nigerians watching this program?
Well, that the immunity should not be removed.
Some say it should be removed.
Some say it should be removed. But I support the fact that it should not be removed.
Okay.
Okay. And
it is, sorry, the immunity is not for life. In fact, if you look at the proviso to Section 308 concerning civil matters, even the limitation period does not apply. For instance, in contract is 6 years. In land matters is 12 years. Once it is 6 years, your action will be statute barred. Limitation period catches up with you. But once you are in office, that 8 years period is not accounted for. That means after the office, you will still be prosecuted, whether in civil or criminal. So the immunity clause is not absolute. It is not for life. It has the time.
All right. Let's take the reaction of Lenel Sikokutepa. You have called for its removal. You are saying, look, let's remove it. Now, my question is, will its removal inject or effect a change in the way we deal with corrupt officials, especially cases involving elected governments? Will it inject that political will that we have all talked about that is missing?
Well, from the tweet you have read, you agree with me that if we are in parliamentary democracy, I've won the date. Most Nigerians say it should be removed. And the reason why I say it should be removed is
I'm
because...
not sure it's most, because...
if you look at it, the majority of them, majority of the tweets you have read, we are here, we can't cover the truth. The truth of the matter is that the way and manner immunity is operated in Nigeria, within Nigerian soil and within Nigerian environment, it's being abused. And the only way we can make people to be careful, and I will take you back to 1983 to 85, when General Muhammad Buhari then and the Agbo were in power. Very many Nigerians were always on cue. The rowdiness and recklessness were not there because people were available to enforce the law. Now there is total absence of law enforcement in this country, and people who are operating the law also breach the law because they know that even after office, no consequences follows. Nigeria is, you are above the law when you are a big man. And if you are a small man, you are under the law. So my suggestion is, if we must retain it, and if we must keep it, and avoid distraction, then we must redefine our conduct towards implementation and enforcement of our law after these people must have left office. 2, if we must retain immunity, I do not subscribe to it that it should go only to the legislature. We have 3 arms of government, then it should also apply to the judicial arm of government. Everybody had in the judicial. Because you know the reason why I say so? Because Nigeria would like to ration everything to cover everybody. And that is why you have a complaint that an appointment, even when it is well-intentioned, does not cover my people. Why do we say it does not cover my people? Because it is when your people are there that they have opportunity of looting. If we make public office less lucrative, if we make public office a place where people can be accounted, and when I made the statement that Professor Reis, my brother from Enugu, was saying I generalized it, I didn't talk about national legislature. I talk about state legislature, and you are aware, some of us are players in the field, we have clients within them, that these people are called into office, they cannot even, when you see governor who are glaringly abusing the constitution, which are impeachable grounds, no legislator will want to talk about it. They talk about the government of J.S. Okutepa. Nobody talks about the government of Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that is why every minister, every governor, every commissioner struggle to mention the name of his governor or his president, even when it is not necessary.
Okay, okay. I think that appellation you attach to your name, Governor Kutepa, you know.
Well, I know I'm not in politics, so I don't want to mention anybody's name.
Let's go to Enugu and Kaduna. But first, Enugu, you've had the opinion of Nigerians. They're a bit divided. To be or not to be? Is it a curse or a blessing, the immunity clause? And how do we strengthen this clause? Or do we extend it to the other arms of government? Let's have your comment, Professor Chara, before Oosters.
Well, I think that sometimes we throw the baby out with the bath water. You know, it's not all. First of all, let's ask ourselves, you know, to do this sort of comparison, you need to ask yourself, during the regimes of Generals Babangida and Abacha, we didn't have immunity clause for the administrators in the states. But did it stop them from looting us blind? You see, the major problem in terms of the ones that people are complaining about, which is not the major reason for this immunity clause. The major thing people are complaining about is something that deals with the will to enforce laws at the public sphere. And you will find that whether you have this immunity clause or you don't have this immunity clause, it won't stop people from stealing. And if you're in good terms with the person in control of the ministries of justice, you cannot be prosecuted. So if you're the governor and you steal state funds, the proper jurisdiction for a criminal prosecution against you is a state law, so it's the Ministry of Justice in the state. And you are appointing the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General. Will that person prosecute you? At the federal level, the same applies. You are the one who appoints the Attorney General Federation. And from the kind of superintendency the Supreme Court, the Constitution gives him in regard to matters of prosecution, will he ever prosecute you? So these are not the issues. The issues are more fundamental, and this is what people are not concentrating attention on. That's my worry. We are not concentrating attention on how to build up our institutions and make sure that, you know, things that we need to do are done. And then the issue of prosecution when people leave office. We've seen that people, when they leave office, are prosecuted. We've seen the examples. In my own state here in Enugu, we know that our previous governor is still being prosecuted. It can well be that the lawyers will keep adjourning the cases for them. But he's still being prosecuted, so you can't say that they're not being prosecuted. So let's not mix up these things. And then when we get back to the issue of how many more people should be given this privilege, there's a misconception people don't seem to realize. The judiciary, for example, are immune. Their own is not postponed vulnerability. They are immune from anything they do in court. Policemen and state officials, when they are acting qua their position as agents of the government, are immune from personal liability for what they've done. So when you look at these things, you find that immunity is not a new thing. We're talking now about particular types of immunity that have been given by our constitution. And I've repeatedly said here, the one given under section 308 is not really immunity. It does not immune you from being subject to attack in future. What it's just saying is, during this period of time, don't be distracted by this. And it's not just a question of distraction that they're talking about. The major reason which the Supreme Court of America has pointed out is the reason for this is that the mere thoughts that people can sue you, even if they are wrong, could make you fail to do the job that the people, the government, the population has given you to do. So, and this thing is especially in regard to people who hold the major executive power, the top executive power. And that's why I say it should not be extended to people who don't hold such power. We should give it only to the president at the federal level and give it to the governor at the state level. What this thing does is that there are some decisions that are dangerous, but you may need to take it for the benefit of the state. Decisions that might involve even deaths. Decisions of entering in, attacking. Like when Osama bin Laden was killed. If Barack Obama was worrying about whether after his term of office, we could be sued for this particular decision of going beyond his state boundaries and shooting somebody, he would not have taken that decision. So there are some reasons behind this. All we are saying is that the good reasons should make us retain it. But it's also a dangerous power. So we should reduce the number of people who benefit from it. That's what we should be thinking about. Let's not use sentiment and leave out the good things that are provided for here just because we're angry about the few or the people who abuse that power. We should find a way of stopping the abuse, but we should not totally disregard the philosophy behind what we have in place.
All right, Professor Ray Sachara, thank you very much. You have consistently talked about the philosophy behind that provision, but you also did say that, look, let's not extend it, let's not extend the number of beneficiaries. So for you, that will mean what the legislature, what the National Assembly is asking for, that, of course, extension of the immunity to them might not be, of course, you might not be in support of that. But let's get the reaction of Leonard Seko Stars in Kaduna. What do you think? What do you make of the National Assembly's request for extension of that immunity clause, to that arm of government?
Understand this, like I said before. Nigerians know that the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives are providing that leadership services, just like the governor and the president. Should you allow these people to be detracted from performing their legislative functions by allowing them to go to court every day? If you do so, I think you are not helping the growth of our legislative arm. I am saying it must be extended to them. But then the moment you carry out the suggestion I've made, the South African example, look, the looters are only interested in 4 things. The first thing is money. The second one is that they should kill their opponents and do anything and go scot-free. The third is that they should be able to carry their money to London and then the UK will use it and will bring us one kobo out of it. So the moment you say, look, with these 4, you can't go, you must be prosecuted, they will all be scared. The only question is, now, how do you ensure that this is practically carried out? The moment this section is amended, then ensure that the security officers and the office of the Attorney General must be done in such a way that no governor or president has a way of controlling them. Now, in South Africa, the president does not appoint the Attorney General. The Attorney General is appointed, the name is submitted after interview by the Chief Justice there, and is confirmed by the Senate, and it can only be removed by 2/3 votes of the Senate. Not the situation where the president appoints, the president will control, the governor will appoint, the governor will control, and even the security agencies like MAGU and the rest of them should go through the same processes. They should never be under the apron of the president, because whoever appoints them can control them. If you do this, and you follow the South African example, now an independent Attorney General will prosecute the president, an independent Commissioner of Justice will prosecute the governor. Once you do these things and leave the peripheral aspect of immunity, like say you insulted me, I cannot sue you for defamation until you leave office. Those ones are not important, but if you don't follow these ones, we are just talking English.
Very valid point there, that the need for Nigeria to adapt the South African system, where the president will be exposed to investigation and prosecution on certain matters and excuse and other ones. On that note, I'd like to say very special thanks to our learned gentleman, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Eunice Ostars, for being part of this conversation today. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll continue now. We still have more contribution via the Skype, of Nigerians. After that, we'll round off on our discussion today. The first one is saying from Wachuku Matthew, Looking at what the constitutional definition of immunity is, I think the local government chairman deserves an immunity too.
That's very sarcastic.
It's expanded now.
All right. Sani Amwakaji, of course, that goes to say, speak to the issue of the prof, what prof said. Sani Amwakaji tweets, the recommendations coming in here shouldn't just end on NTA. It should be a working compendium to federal government to act on.
Well, Bobo K says immunity is a term that has been misused in Nigeria. Decent climes don't allow it. Everything happens in Nigeria.
Chooks Ojinta tweets, if the argument is immunity should be extended to National Assembly, it's also logical that such is extended to state houses of assembly.
Okay, and Musa here says immunity should be removed for the governors in particular. This is my view.
And Afin Bukayai tweets, why can't we adopt the U.S. system of immunity clause into Nigerian constitutions?
All right, we also have from Ibrahim Tudu, imagine immunity of speaker voted senator, then to speaker, senate, then to president on 2 terms each. 8 terms, 8 terms times 5 years. Please let us abandon this immunity issue. It's archaic and does not work in Nigeria. We should be more patriotic as lawyers.
All right, and this one, teaching impact tweets, redefine detail of immunity and reorientate public office holders adequately.
Well, we also have another one from Kayode Ajayi. Legislators will remain in the pocket of the governor inasmuch as they are handpicked by the governor to the house.
All right, and finally, Bonnie Mo tweets, still allowing immunity to fly in a country that has been defiled by corruption is a disgrace to our democracy. Immunity so far has not helped, rather it has encouraged corruption and impunity.
Okay, we now move to Enugu, where we'll get the last comment of Professor Achara on the way forward. Just 1 second.
Well, the way forward is for us not to be immersed in sentiments. You know, you should ask yourself, if immunity is removed today, do you believe that governors who have been stealing will stop stealing? That's what you should ask yourself. The major reason why this thing is in place is really to guard against individuals like the president hounding people who are not in his political party and vice versa. You see, the problem is not that, you know, because we now have a man of integrity as our president does not mean that we will always have a man of integrity as our president. So what if you have somebody who is terrible and then he decides that anybody who is not in his party in a different state will be hounded? Will that be something that we want to happen? So he can bring up any suit. And you know that it's not just a question of, if you're a litigation lawyer as I am, you will know that the mere prosecution is enough to put somebody down. Even if you're innocent and after 3 years of prosecution you are found not guilty, the 3 years during which you have been prosecuted will so destroy you physically and mentally and psychologically that you will not be able to get out of it. So you can imagine if a person who is the primus inter pares in the particular state, who is in charge of executive functions of the state, is open to attacks left, right, and center because there's no immunity for the period of his office, you think that he will be able to do the job you have sent him there to do. Let us quit dealing with sentiments.
Special thanks to Professor Reis Achara, a constitutional lawyer of the University of Nigeria, Enugu campus. We thank you so much for your well-informed contribution to this conversation. We thank you. We thank you.
Let's get back here and just a last response from Leonard Sikokutepa. You say we should remove immunity clause. If that happens, what happens to the clause of impeachment?
Well, impeachment? How many people have been impeached in Nigeria? They are, you see, my problem...
We've had 6 persons impeached.
My problem is when you look at those who have been impeached and you look at it very well, time will not help us it was the Supreme Court that saved the gale of impeachment that we had in Nigeria, because there is a provision in our constitution that impeachment is not justiciable until you took the intervention of Nigerian Supreme Court to say, look, if you don't do this thing according to what is supposed to be done, then it's justiciable, and a stop was put to it. My suggestion is that whether we retain or not retaining impeachment, there is a need for all Nigerians to be patriotic and have a real love for Nigeria, and let Nigerian state also show tremendous love for those who show patriotism to Nigerian society. Okay. Because a situation where people have worked and government just forget them, it does not make people to be patriotic, and that is why everybody wants to save for the rainy day, and they want to steal so that when they leave office, they have something to live on.
All right, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Jibrin Okutepa, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Tao. Let's get your last comment on the way forward. People are calling for extension of immunity. Some are saying remove it. Just briefly on what we think we need to do to strengthen the law.
My own position is to strengthen institutions of democracy, like the legislature and all that. And the mode of appointment of those who are responsible for prosecution, for investigation, like the Attorney General, the mode of appointment, they should not be appointed by the President or the Executive. There should be a mode of appointment that will make him independent. The same thing with EFCC chairman. Once that is done, the institutions will be strengthened. And once the institution is strengthened, because the problem of Nigeria mainly is system failure, and it's due to the institutions not being strong.
Okay. On that note, I'd like to say special thanks to Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Taiwo Ejatawo. We thank you so much for your contributions, and we hope you'll come back when we have other issues to discuss.
You're welcome.
By the way,
Picnic in Paris, France on Sunday.
This is what we live with.
Mikel Obi and his compatriot Victor Moses resumed pre-season with Chelsea on Monday at Cobham after their summer break. The duo joined up with the rest of the squad after they underwent medical screening, while Mikel was a regular for Chelsea after the exit of Jose Mourinho. Victor Moses was on a season-long loan spell at